Hey there, and welcome to this edition of Harris's Heroes. I am so thrilled to introduce you to the guest we're going to be talking to today because he is such a great example of why I love living in this region. Because as I always say, you can just walk down the street or just stand in line at a grocery store and just bump into somebody who is doing something incredible and changing lives in the process around you, happening every day under the radar. Well, my guest today is not only a successful businessman in the world of real estate, he's got an impressive portfolio, has been responsible for transforming the landscape and communities in this region for decades now. But the most important thing is that's what's happening above the radar with him. What's happening under it is truly remarkable because his life is now a testament to resilience and strength in the face of adversity. And I want to learn so much more about that. Joe Benkowski. He is my friend now and my new neighbor. I was so gratified to meet him just walking down the street getting some exercise. And I learned from just a few minutes in talking with him that Joe faced a life-altering challenge. He was diagnosed with one of the most deadly forms of cancer. But instead of giving up, instead of succumbing and giving in to despair, he chose to fight back using something I had never heard of before I actually had this conversation with him, something called a naturopathic approach. And he demonstrated in the process, in fact, he's demonstrating it to this day because he's still doing this. He's still pursuing this approach. He is showing incredible strength and determination and is helping others by sharing his story and this approach with us today. So join us now as we talk with Joe Benkowski and get some more about his secrets to success in the competitive world of real estate, but also more importantly, what he's learned in the process of overcoming this incredible health challenge that he's been facing and is facing today and is sharing his time with us today. Joe, thanks for giving us some time. Good to see you, my friend.
You know, Leon, good morning, and thank you for letting me share my story. I want to tell you that I find your series on Harris's Heroes truly inspirational, and I think it's going to do the broader community a lot of benefit, as well as yourself, in inspiring people to do as much as they can to help others, more specifically, to do as much as they can to help themselves when they're hit with adversity. And I'm going to let you lead me through, if you would, my story.
Well, let's lay the foundation first. Let folks know, first of all, about your background. Your background is in real estate. You're a founding member, partner of Seaton Benkowski, correct? Tell us about what it was that got you into real estate and what was it that inspired you about it?
Well, you know, it's interesting. We all have beginnings, right? And my parents were Eastern European settlers here in the States and in the dairy business. And it was a first generation, you know, and then the next generation, this does go to why I got into real estate. The next generation isn't high on education, but they get into trucking, they get into the construction trades as well as the dairy business. And my generation was off to college. Well, if your father was in construction, what do you study? You go to school and you get a civil engineering degree, and then you study real estate, if you would. And along the way, money isn't as plentiful as you'd like. So you're working your way through school, and you start a small real estate company. And Madison, Wisconsin, where my alma mater was, University of Wisconsin, when I go back, that little town of what was then 50,000 people, I managed a large part of the residential community. A little project I turned around, the newest, best project in town, syndicated homes rented to students out of research. And so you moved on to service, and you were with the Corps of Engineers. You get out of service, I'm back to real estate. And instead of it being civil engineering, it was litigation testimony support for troubled real estate projects. I spent a decade doing that. The end of the decade, I was chief of real estate for the government parties on the Penn Central and 6 other railroads in the Northeast and Midwest, their bankruptcy. So when you left that, I'm still doing troubled real estate into the 80s for Citicorp. And from that, went on to being a lender and then starting an equity business for Citicorp Real Estate, Inc. And the S&L crisis hits. Oh, by the way, you know what I should have said? I'm 82. So there's a lot of decades of activity. So in the 80s, I was in banking and in the 90s, I went into business myself. First of all, again, back to the workouts in commercial real estate. And then later, in an effort to take Wall Street money to Eastern Asia when the baht devalued and Asia had its real estate problems, and then came back to the States. You notice I brushed over that. That wasn't the biggest success.
No.
Wall Street could not make it work. So came back to the States, and albeit it was a tragic time, 9/11 happened in 2001.
Uh-huh.
I had sourced a substantial amount of money, and Wall Street froze, and so all the deals in Washington, D.C. were collapsing, and I was able to take the relationships I had and what you learned along the way, and according to the local brokers, for 2 years, my little firm of Seaton, Benkowski and Partners was the most active acquirer of high-rise commercial property in the Washington, D.C. area.
Amazing.
We had a successful 15 years, and I'm pleased to say, since my major sponsors were foundations that gave their money to charities, I'm pleased to say that run, we were able to give them near $4 every dollar they invested with us.
That's
And
amazing.
so
And
that
making
got
an
me,
impact there as well.
yes, it made you feel good about what you were doing. Made your
Let me,
staff work later,
Mhm.
work harder.
With that in mind, let me ask you about a word you just used a little while ago, because it struck me after talking to you a little bit about this being a key point of your development and your success and what you think is important. You mentioned the word relationships. What have you learned about the importance of relationships, and in particular, mentoring relationships? You've told me that you thought that was really important and was a factor in your development and development of others.
Well, I think for most people that pursue a career, I can only really speak to an entrepreneurial career. I was
Mhm.
always trying to create something, run something. Relationships are at the primary essence of it. I could almost take every step, and it was because someone knew you
Mhm.
and you had established yourself as having the competence to do something, but more importantly, the integrity, if you would, that you need to sustain it, and the commitment to always leave it better off than when you found it. I think life in business gets pretty simple at the core.
Is there any one key lesson that you've learned through this whole process? You come a long way from being a farm boy in Wisconsin, I can tell you that. What would you say? What would you say to a newcomer who may be wanting to follow in your footsteps? What advice would you give?
You know, I was a mentor for 10 years for a professional association
Hmm.
in my trade. You know, when you talk to people that had 5 to 15 years of experience and they're trying to figure out how to get ahead,
Hmm.
I think the basic advice I'd always give them is that they should just always try and get stronger. Every day, get up and say, not only what can I do to make my current employer better, but what can I do to make myself stronger? And that
Hmm.
what they did off the job was equally and more important than what they did on the job. And and so it was the skills that they learned and the contacts that they made that made the difference in being able to always do something bigger and bigger and bigger. And the thought always was that in that you aim pretty high,
Hmm.
and so even if you miss, you're well above average. And that would probably define me.
Well, I'm beginning to learn quite a few things define you, and to me, one of the most impressive ones is the challenge that you faced and your response to it. Okay, you talk about your advice to people coming behind you and younger folks about building themselves and being stronger. You took that to a completely different level when you were diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Me personally, I have to tell you, when you told me that gave me a shudder because I've been terrified of that. I was hospitalized for almost a month with pancreatitis, and had a fear ever since that my demise could be from pancreatic cancer. So I fear that because I've heard so many terrible stories about families that have had to deal with it. What was it like when you got that diagnosis?
Well, you know, I mean, first, of course, it's pretty horrifying. And I do remember when somebody tells you that you probably have 6 months to live.
Hmm.
You have to deal with that. And what is interesting I didn't have pain. I think that's important to note. But what's interesting, I'm not so certain that the human spirit in some instances doesn't have a protective mechanism because I accepted it. I was
Really?
calmly resolute about it.
Really?
Everybody around you was crying and feeling sorry for you, and can't explain it. You accept it. But what I did do is I immediately started to try and figure out what I could do to fight it.
Mm-hmm.
Fortuitously, not that it's necessary, but fortuitously, we're in a community in Washington, D.C., where there's a lot of great medical
Absolutely.
institutions.
I tell people all the
And
time, we're lucky. We're 10 minutes away from some of the best healthcare in the world, no matter where you are here in this region.
yes. And I know that similar people, to my situation would fly across the country, et cetera. But, I think the state of the medical industry is where it is. And if you've got a number of good, competent people around you, it's to find relationships and protocols that you like. I think what I found was that each institution, I'll back up. There is no magic bullet for the cure of cancer.
Yeah.
At least ways I didn't find one or hear of one. So the science has come a long way toward the attempted treatment of it. Most institutions have individual protocols that they follow. And so the big thing was and they used before. And I think what they're looking to do, and this is me speaking, is continue to accumulate information and do variances of that protocol to have it ultimately be the one thing that could cure cancer. It would be, my wife often likes to say there's many pretty dresses. You have to pick one, and they pick a protocol and they try and take it to perfection.
But it's got to fit. You got to pick one that fits.
And you have to find people that you trust and that you think are going to be empathetic to you, and give you the flexibility to not just solely work with them, but to continue to work on the process. And I was fortuitous in that.
So you didn't try a number of different approaches before you settled on this naturopathic one?
Well, I did conventional medicine. I think it's good to qualify that I'm not a doctor. I'm not a student of medicine. I'm an example of. I'm an experience. And so I think if I looked at my experience and I'd say, what do I think I learned? I think that I would have been foolhardy to pass up not going the conventional medicine route. And by that, I mean going to the doctors that are expert at the various components of analyzing and treating cancer. And so I had my chemotherapy. In fact, as a sidebar, I had 50% more than they recommended. I had my radiation. As a sidebar, I did 20% more than they recommended. And I had my attempted Whipple surgery, since I had pancreatic cancer, where they remove a part of your stomach and organs around your pancreas. It didn't work.
That's one of the most drastic approaches to dealing with that particular cancer.
Yes. In fact, that cancer is fatal. And in even Whipple surgery, the 5-year survival is in the 2% range. 5% range, depending on whose statistics.
Those are pretty bad odds.
So
those are pretty tough odds.
Yes. And then there was I shouldn't say new, it's been around in the near term, it's called irreversible electroporation, where they use electricity in probes to try and kill the cells in the tumor. Mm-hmm. And I did that as well. Wow. The difference between radiation and the fancy word in cancer today is stereotactic. It means that rather than treating you with your full body radiation, they'll focus it on a tumor itself.
Concentrate on the one part of the body.
For pancreatic cancer, the dilemma is there's so many vital organs next to the pancreas that the radiation, even though you target it, goes beyond the boundaries of the tumor and is actually doing damage to other vital organs. It's in part why they have to remove some of them. Now, the irreversible electroporation, they put a probe in that's tiny and has hair-width electric probes inside of it. And they send electricity down those probes, and there's shorts that happen. So the shorts kill cells, but it doesn't radiate out to the other organs in your body. Yeah. And they can do a better job of the periphery of the tumor.
Okay, so you, like some of the, all right, I just want to get to where what was it then that made you decide to go in a completely different direction then? You tried all these different methods. This electrical preparation, that sounds That sounds like maybe like a last straw kind of approach. What then led you to go to this naturopathic method? Because I had never heard of this before. What was it that led you to this, and what is it all about? What does it mean?
You know, what led me is first a piece of drama, and then second, a lot of heroes. Let me go back to the drama.
Hmm.
So after I did just what we said, I went through more chemo. And then I'm sitting in one of my doctor's rooms, there's she and I said, what else can I do? Now, I must tell you that, so we're a year and a half in. I weigh close to 50 pounds less. I'm skin and bones. I'm a 185-pound guy that's down to 130.
You put your body through
And
it.
well, modern medicine, it's tough. And so I'm looking for what else can I do? And I was told to go home and enjoy life. And so I asked the question, is it going to come back? And the answer was yes.
Hmm.
It's like, well, now what am I going to do? Then what would I do? And the answer was, we'll fight it all over again. Thought goes through your mind, well, we didn't beat it this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I say, so effectively, you're telling me to go home and wait to die. And I didn't get an answer. That's what motivated me to do more. And then I think amongst all of us, we have friends who have illnesses like your pancreatitis. You
Yeah.
met people, the neighbor. I meet you at the mailbox. We talk about it. From it, you get a direction. And before you know it, it's amazing how that pyramid begins to get you to talk to different doctors. All of a sudden, someone I didn't know gives me an introduction to the head researcher at NIH, to various doctors in the community doing research. And I stumbled onto, and I think I might have mentioned this to you in private conversation,
Hmm.
a stranger, one of
Uh-huh.
my heroes, who invited me and my wife to a conversation on an early Sunday morning in a neighborhood deli to talk about the journey that she and her husband went through.
Hmm.
And I was so inspired by the fact that they didn't quit, that it made me continue. And fortuitously, had a sister-in-law working on a degree in naturopathic medicine, and she sends me a stack of books. One of those books was by a Dr. Thomas Seyfried,
Hmm.
who is a noted New England metastatic brain cancer physician
Hmm.
who does research on cancer therapy. And his is that you can starve cancer.
Hmm.
And
Starve it.
starve it. Early in the 1940s, a Dr. Warburg made the discovery that cancer grows off of glucose, fancy word for sugar. It's what it uses to grow. And that if you deprive it of sugar, you can put its growth into abeyance.
But the body needs the sugar too, right?
Yes, yes. But the body is also a hybrid operating system. It can run on healthy oils. It'll go to the sugar first if it's there and it burns. But if it isn't there, you can, by having a diet of oils, your body will convert over. And it's the basis of the keto diet.
It sounds like the keto diet.
Yes, it is. In fact, to go back to Dr. Fried's findings. So 10 years ago, when I started this, the science was a lot further behind than it is today.
Hmm.
And Dr. Seyfried was attempting to keep patients healthy for another 4 months, 6 months, so he could continue to find ways to have them survive. And I might have misunderstood his concept that you could starve it.
What do you mean?
I thought you could seriously starve it.
What, you starved yourself?
No, starve the cancer. Okay.
Okay.
And so, but in his treatments, he had helped a young boy that was the son of someone who today, her name is Miriam Calamian, one of the nation's most noted cancer nutritionists.
Okay.
And Miriam has more initials after her name than any doctor I've ever seen. And it's a mother trying to save her son.
Uh,
And she was able to extend his life through nutrition and conventional medicine for 9 years.
wow.
I met Miriam. She has a business. She wrote a book, Keto for Cancer.
Okay. Keto for cancer.
Yes. And Dr. Seyfried, has the introduction to that book. It's a simple way to understand his process, because if you read one of Dr. Seyfried's books, it'll make your head spin.
Yeah.
He's a doctor. You need to go out and get an independent degree. And they both became my guiding light, if you would.
Okay.
But as soon as you realized that it may not kill the cancer, it can only, put it in abeyance, you're looking for more. And I found a young gentleman, I'll back up, to give this perspective as to the possible credit to the approach.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in the hospital, I met 4 other patients, same doctors, same attempted conventional approaches, all pancreatic cancer, tumors,
Yeah.
all given the same diagnosis, 6 months. None of those 4 are here today.
Really?
They didn't do what I did. Would it have made the difference?
What did you do different?
I'm the first to admit
Did you do something
that I
differently
could be
than
the
them?
luckiest guy on earth.
Well, what do you think the
I
difference
did,
was?
Dr. C. One, the diet, starve the cancer of sugar, right? And then 2, to expand that metabolic approach, which I can thumbnail for you. But the diet, back up. More drama. I have learned that cancer grows on sugar. It can consume sugar at 40 to 50 times the rate of a normal cell and grow at 10 times the rate of a normal cell. That's the scary part. You got to stop feeding it. And so the first was to adopt this diet of Dr. Seyfried's, which Miriam Calamian's book, Keto for Cancer, does a yeoman's job of. And simplistically, it's to go sugar-free and calorie restricted. The sugar-free is you give up everything that's white. You give up bread, you give up pasta, you give up potatoes, you give up pastries. What you're left with is healthy food. You're left with eggs, chicken, fish, green vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, and mixed berries for your micronutrients is the core of a diet. Boring, but repetitive, and I think necessary to stop feeding the cancer. But then what I discovered through meeting people, that you could also try and fight it metabolically.
Uh-huh.
And again, I think it's important to focus on the metabolism. Dr. Seyfried believes that only 20% of cancer is genetically related, DNA related.
Okay.
That the other 80% comes from a metabolic breakdown. It could be from abuse through smoking, being overweight, breathing asbestos. It could be from a virus, could be from a tapeworm. Anything that breaks down cells. And that breakdown of cells takes those cells and interrupts their natural process that doctors call apoptosis, where the cells renew themselves every 90 days. And to understand it as a layman, always thought of it as those cells become like a rotting potato in a root cellar. They sprout, and those sprouts consume sugar to, in their own sense, stay alive or continue to grow. Well, it was the metabolism that broke down. So now you're starving that rotting potato, if you would. But how can you fight it to stop it? And that's where I went into naturopathic medicine, if you would. And the first thing I began to do is I was introduced to a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Pissarro of Green Healing and Wellness. And he put together a cocktail of herbs and nutrients that would fight cancer and help strengthen your immunity system. And a lot of this comes out of, old Chinese medicine. I mean, you're taking things like concentrated mushroom extract, concentrated green tea, curcumin, a bunch of things, if you would. I take wheat germ, and they've all over time been used to create drugs or to naturally, fight cancer. So you made that a part of your diet, and stuck to it. But then the other thing I began to learn is how important stress was. You had to work on stress management, how important sleep was. University of California and their Berkeley labs have, in the last 15 years, made unbelievable discoveries about the importance of sleep. I began to learn how important fasting was in order to strengthen the operating process of your cells. I could go on, but it all had to do with strengthening your metabolism. And so that metabolism could come back to helping fight the cancer. You know, when you grew up in central Wisconsin and your family started out in the dairy business, I think as a young child, you begin to experience the exhilaration of getting up every morning at 4 o'clock, to be in the barn at 5 milking cows, to be in the fields at 8, to work till 4 in the afternoon, only to be back in the barn again at night at 5 o'clock, to be in bed at 8, and to do that 7 days a week, and to take problems as they come up, solve them yourself, help your neighbor, have your neighbor help you during baling season, thrashing season, to enjoy family. You know, Sundays were your day. You got up at 4 and milked the cows first, and you quit that day in the evening milking those cows again. But in between, you went to church and you went to grandma's on Sundays. Right. Yes, it is. But it teaches you about everything that's real in life. And I believe it teaches you that you can enjoy work. And so in that, you worked your way through college and you worked your way through a variety of careers that were demanding. If you're in the litigation business, it's demanding. The equity business, it's the deal business. Much like the litigation business, when there's a deal there, you drop everything to pursue it. And starting your own business is demanding. And maybe you wake up one day and what you found is, as you did things, if you applied yourself, and it sounds dramatic to say you never gave up, but you just kept working at things, you found solutions that you could get to work.
Yeah.
And so you just didn't think about it, you just did it.
But you know, it sounds like what you also do, and what you also did was find people to put into your circles who were built the same way and who fed that fire inside of you. That's got to be very important too. That's got to be an important part of the process in recovering and sustaining your health as well as every other part of your life, don't you think?
Yes. Yes. I mean, it is extremely, extremely important. I mean, one, if you're in commercial real estate in the deal business, one could say we're all fantasizing. It's, you know, how do you build bigger and better communities? You know, how do you put together bigger portfolios? How do you manage them? But on the cancer front, once you get into research, stem cell theory, et cetera, it is inspirational how people, I hate to say make sacrifices, but give up. I hate to say give up. Dedicate their lives to working on these things. Alfred Sloan had a statement once. You know, he was one of the founding tycoons in this country that there are no sacrifices, there are only choices. And I think that the heroes in my life were people that made choices to work on things, and they found their enjoyment in it.
You have made yourself a hero to a lot of people just by sharing your journey with us today. Joe Benkowski, you're not only a neighbor now, you're a hero of mine. I want to thank you for what you've done, and you've inspired me. I've got to do a better job of making sure that I learn more about what it's going to take to preserve my health the way that you're doing it for yourself and now sharing it with so many other people. Thank you so much, and good luck to you going down the road, my friend.
Well, and if Leon, if I can parrot what I said to begin this, I'm really enjoying your podcast series. And I think that it should be very rewarding to yourself because I'm finding it inspirational for me to do even more to help others. And for that matter, to continue to do as much as I can to make certain that I can continue to stay healthy and help myself.
And I have no doubt that you will. Thanks, Joe. We'll talk to you soon.
Sure. Same.